2,000 years ago, the center of the world for most people was their own village. Take a look at this settlement. This is Nazareth, a small, quiet, and deeply unassuming Jewish town, built of rough stone. Living among these stone houses was a young Jewish girl named Mary. She was unmarried, but her life was set on a predictable, traditional path. She was betrothed to a local man named Joseph. Then, a messenger from God, an angel named Gabriel, appeared to Mary with a staggering message. He told her she would have a child, a boy named Jesus, who would be known as the Son of God. Mary accepted this path, but it is worth noting that this spiritual claim was made in total obscurity, occurring far away from the marble floors and echoing halls where the world's visible power was concentrated. The real power at the time belonged to the Roman Empire, and specifically to this man, Emperor Caesar Augustus. His decisions carried sweeping authority over millions of lives. That imperial reach eventually stretched into Nazareth. Roman soldiers arrived to announce a new decree from the emperor himself, a law that required immediate compliance from every citizen. Look at this silver denarius. It's a physical reminder of the empire's economic grip. Augustus's decree was entirely about accounting and control, a mandatory registration or census, so the empire could accurately collect taxes. The empire's needs took priority over individual needs. Imperial bureaucracy overrode personal circumstance, forcing a vulnerable young couple into a massive mandatory migration. The strict rules of this census dictated that citizens couldn't just register where they currently lived. They were legally compelled to travel to their ancestral hometowns. For Joseph, that meant heading south to a town called Bethlehem. This map illustrates the geographic hurdle they faced. The path from Nazareth down to Bethlehem covers roughly 65 miles. Traveling this on foot over rocky elevation changes took many grueling days, and Mary was very close to giving birth. To the scribes in Rome managing the census, Mary and Joseph were merely two data points moving across a ledger. But on the ground, fulfilling the emperor's demand was a physical struggle for survival. When they finally reached Bethlehem, they found a city overwhelmed. The town was dense and heavily clustered, experiencing an acute housing shortage due to the sudden influx of migrants complying with the law. Joseph tried to find suitable lodging. He went from inn to inn, knocking and asking for space, but every proprietor turned them away. The town was entirely at capacity. Exhausted, with Mary about to deliver, Joseph had nowhere left to turn. The situation forced a desperate plea for any form of shelter. The emperor's top-down demand for immediate compliance had an immediate consequence. It created a housing bottleneck that left the empire's most vulnerable citizens stranded on the street. Pushed out of the formal lodging system entirely, the young couple had to make do with whatever space they could find. They ended up taking shelter in a small, humble stable meant for livestock, and it was there, that night, that Mary gave birth to Jesus. There were no midwives or royal attendants, just the quiet presence of animals and the smell of fresh hay. Lacking a proper crib, they had to improvise. This is a manger, a carved stone feeding trough for livestock, much like the one they filled with hay to lay the newborn baby in. This diagram highlights the disconnect between expectations and reality. On one side is what you would expect for the arrival of a king, a towering, fortified palace. On the other is the actual setting, a tiny, improvised animal shelter. The birth occurred completely off the radar of the Roman government. The event bypassed the political elite and the centers of power entirely. Because the birth happened away from the city center, the first people to hear the news were not dignitaries. Out in the nearby quiet fields, local shepherds were simply working the night shift, keeping watch over their flocks. According to the story, the dark sky lit up. An angel appeared directly to these common laborers, telling them that a savior had just been born, and giving them the specific location. The shepherds were ecstatic. Leaving the fields behind, they ran straight toward the stable, finding Mary, Joseph, and the baby lying in the manger, exactly as the messenger had promised. Those shepherds didn't keep the discovery to themselves. They became the very first to carry the news back out into the world, telling everyone they encountered about what they had seen. The story persists because of this contrast. A sprawling, rigid bureaucracy unknowingly created the specific conditions for a narrative centered on the margins of society.